The year is 2023. The setting is the annual convention for the American Farm Bureau, a ballroom in Omaha, Nebraska. Chicken, green beans, a dinner roll on 1,000 plates. The keynote speaker is a young man. His name is Daniel Vance. He's 35 years old. He runs one of the most profitable and resilient farming operations in the state. He's talking about the future of agriculture. He's not talking about drones. He's not talking about satellite data or AI. He's talking about a wrench. He's talking about a service manual. He's talking about the right to repair your own machine. In the audience, a man named Thomas Miller listens. His face is tight. Tom runs Miller Ag Solutions, the biggest dealership in 3 counties. It was his father's dealership before him. On the giant screen behind Daniel Vance, a slide appears. It's a black and white photograph, a woman in her late 20s. She's standing in front of an old farmhouse. Her expression is grim but determined. Under the photo, a caption: Alara Vance, 1993. Then the next slide. It's a close-up of a small electronic part, a plastic rectangle with a few metal pins, a single line of text below it. Crankshaft position sensor, $38. The room is quiet. Tom Miller feels a cold knot in his stomach. He recognizes the part. He knows the story. Or he thought he did. Because 30 years ago, his father, Frank Miller, a good man, a church elder, a pillar of the community, sat this very woman down in his office. He had quoted her $6,000 to replace that exact part. He told her she couldn't do it. He told her she should sell. He told her, with kindness in his heart, that she was finished. This is the story of that $38 part and the 30-year gap between being told you can't and proving, beyond any doubt, that you can. This channel tells the stories of people who were counted out, people who were told no, people who fought back not with shouting, but with work. If you believe those stories need to be told, subscribe. Because the story of Alara Vance is the story of a quiet revolution that began with a single invoice. And you're not going to want to miss what happened next. Let's go back. The year is 1993, March. The ground is thawing, but the air still bites. Alara Vance stood on her back porch. She was 29 years old. Her husband, Michael, had been gone for 6 months. A rollover accident with the old utility tractor. A freak occurrence on a perfectly flat field. It happened in an instant. It left a hole that felt like a crater. She was left with the farm. 480 acres of good Iowa soil. She was left with a son, Daniel, who was 5 years old. And she was left with a mountain of debt. Michael had been a forward-thinking farmer. He believed in technology. He believed in efficiency. The year before he died, he had traded in most of their older, paid-for equipment. He bought a brand new combine and a brand new tractor, a Case IH Magnum 7240. It was a beast, red paint shining in the weak spring sun. It was also a mystery. The cab was filled with screens and buttons, not levers and gauges. Michael had understood it. He had spent hours reading the manuals. Alara had not. Her domain was the books, the logistics, the household. Now it was all her domain. The bank owned most of that tractor. The payment was due on the 1st of every month. It was a number that kept her awake at night. She knew she had one chance, one season. She had to get the corn in the ground. If she could get a crop, she could make the payment. She could survive another year. She could hold on. She climbed into the cab of the Magnum. The seat hissed as it adjusted to her lighter weight. It still smelled like Michael, a mix of diesel, dirt, and coffee. She took a deep breath. She put the key in the ignition. She turned it. The dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree. Lights blinked. A screen glowed. But the engine didn't turn over. Just a click. A dead, final-sounding click. She tried again. Click. And again. Click. A small, insistent beeping started from a panel to her right. An error code flashed on the tiny digital screen. Code 351. She had no idea what it meant. There was no lever to jiggle, no wire to check. Not like the old Ford 8N her father had taught her to drive. This was a computer with wheels, and it was telling her no. She felt a wave of panic, cold and sharp. She got out of the cab. She stood in the mud of the farmyard. The red tractor loomed over her, silent, immovable, a 6-figure paperweight. She had only one option. She went inside, her hands shaking slightly. She picked up the phone. She called the dealer. Miller Ag Solutions. Frank Miller's voice was warm, familiar. He had sold the tractor to Michael. He had come to the funeral. He sent a card. "Frank, I'm sorry to bother you. It's Ilara Vance." "Of course, Ilara. Not a bother at all. What can I do for you?" "The Magnum won't start." She explained the situation, the lights, the click, the code. Frank listened patiently. "All right," he said. "Don't you worry. I'll send my best technician out there this afternoon. We'll get you sorted out." She felt a flood of relief. "Thank you, Frank. Thank you so much." "Don't you mention it," he said. "We take care of our own." The technician arrived a few hours later. He was young, confident. He carried a laptop in a ruggedized case. He didn't even open the engine compartment. He plugged a thick cable into a port under the dashboard. He typed on his keyboard. He stared at the screen. He nodded to himself. "Yep," he said. "It's what I thought." He unplugged his laptop. He closed the cab door. "What is it?" Ilara asked. "Crankshaft position sensor is shot." He spoke the words casually, like it was a flat tire. To Ilara, it sounded like a foreign language. "Can you fix it?" "Oh yeah, we can fix it, but I don't have the part on the truck. We'll have to order it. Takes a day or two. Then we'll come back out, pop the new one in, clear the code. You'll be good to go." He handed her a work order slip to sign. It was mostly blank, just the diagnostic fee, $250. She swallowed hard. That was grocery money for 2 weeks. But she had no choice. She signed it. "The office will call you with a full quote," the technician said. He got in his truck and drove away, leaving her alone again with the silent red tractor. The call came the next morning. It was Frank Miller himself. "Ilara," he said, his voice gentle. "I've got the estimate here for the repair." She held her breath. Frank cleared his throat. "Look, there's the part itself. Then there's the service call, and the labor to install it, and we have to recalibrate the engine control module after the new sensor is in. All told, you're looking at $6,150. Silence. The number hung in the air. It did not compute. It was an impossible number. It was more than she had in the bank. It was a death sentence for the crop. For the farm. "Ilara, are you there?" "I'm here," she whispered. $6,000? For a sensor? "I know it's a shock," he said. "I truly do. This new equipment, it's a different world. The parts are proprietary. The software is locked. We have to pay for the licenses, the diagnostic tools. Our hands are tied." He paused. "Ilara, can I be frank with you?" She didn't answer. He took it as a yes. "I've known your family my whole life. I sold your daddy his first new tractor back in '68. I watched you and Michael build this place up. My heart breaks for what you're going through. And I'm not going to be the man who lets you pour your savings into a losing battle. This is just the start. Next year, it'll be an injector pump or a transmission controller. Each one will be another $5,000, $10,000. You can't keep up with that. Nobody can without deep pockets. His voice was so reasonable, so full of concern. What am I supposed to do, Frank? He sighed, a heavy, paternal sound. I've been thinking about that. You've got good land, Ilara. Prime land. The big co-op, they're looking to expand their acreage. They'd lease your ground for a very fair price. You'd have a steady income, no risk, no debt. You could stay in the house, raise Daniel. It's a good option, a safe option. Or you could sell. Prices have never been higher. You could walk away with a substantial nest egg, start fresh. She felt the floor drop out from under her. He was telling her to quit. He was telling her it was over. He wasn't just fixing a tractor. He was mapping out the end of her life as she knew it. Ilara, he said softly, I'm just trying to protect you. This isn't a world for... It's just not manageable for one person, especially not with everything else on your plate. He left the rest unsaid. A woman, alone, grieving. She was not capable. He had decided for her. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not by an enemy, not by a rival, by someone who genuinely believes they are helping you, someone who wraps your limitations in a blanket of kindness. There is no anger you can use against that. There is no argument that can pierce that certainty. Tell me in the comments if you've ever faced that kind of wall. Because what Ilara Vance did next was not to argue. It was not to yell. It was to hang up the phone. She sat at her kitchen table for a long time. The silence of the house was deafening. Frank's words echoed in her head. Protect you. Safe option. Not manageable. He had judged her, weighed her, found her wanting, and he had done it with the gentle authority of a man who believed he was right. That was the part that hurt the most. The kindness. It felt like being smothered with a pillow. She looked out the window. Her neighbor, Silas Croft, was driving his old pickup down her lane. Silas was in his 70s. He had farmed the adjacent section his whole life until the '80s crisis. The bank had taken everything. He and his wife now lived in a small house on a 5-acre plot the bank couldn't be bothered to seize. He did odd jobs, mowed ditches, helped with harvest when he could. He was a ghost of a farmer, a walking reminder of how quickly it could all disappear. He parked the truck and walked to the door. He knocked softly. Ilara opened it. Silas held his battered cap in his hands. Saw the dealer's truck here yesterday, and again this morning. Figured it wasn't a social call. His eyes were kind but not pitying. They were knowing. She told him everything. The tractor, the code, the $6,000 quote, Frank's advice to sell the land. She told him in a flat, emotionless voice. The tears were frozen somewhere deep inside her. Silas listened without interrupting. He stared at the ground, turning his cap over and over in his gnarled fingers. When she was finished, he was quiet for a full minute. Then he looked up. His eyes were narrowed. $6,000. He said the words like he was tasting something foul. For a crank sensor. He shook his head slowly. That ain't a repair bill, Ilara. That's an eviction notice. He looked past her, at the silent red tractor in the yard. What was that code again? 351, she said. He nodded. Let me make a call. He went to his truck. He had a bag phone, a relic even then. She watched through the window as he talked to someone. He wrote something down on a scrap of paper. He came back to the door. The part number is 874-20953. It's a standard-issue Bosch sensor. They use it in a dozen different engines. Trucks, tractors, generators. There's nothing special about it. He handed her the scrap of paper. There's a fellow runs a parts warehouse over in Des Moines. He can get it for you. He's got it on the shelf. How much? She asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Silas looked her straight in the eye. $38, plus shipping. $38, not $6,000. The gap between those two numbers was more than just money. It was a canyon of disrespect. It was the distance between what she was told and what was true. Ilara felt something shift inside her. The frozen knot of grief and fear began to melt, and in its place, a slow, cold anger started to burn. Not a hot, flashing anger, a deep, quiet, industrial anger. The kind you can build something with. Can you get it for me, Silas? He nodded. Already did. He'll have it on the bus tomorrow morning. I'll pick it up. But how do we install it? She asked. The technician said it had to be calibrated. Silas almost smiled. He said the dealer has to calibrate it. That's different. The sensor tells the engine where top dead center is. It's a simple magnetic pickup. There's no calibration. You bolt it in, you plug it in. The computer either sees the signal or it don't. They tell you it's complicated because they sell complication. That's the business model. The next morning, Silas came back. He held a small cardboard box in his hand. Inside, nestled in foam, was the sensor. It was identical to the one on the screen at the Farm Bureau convention 30 years later. It felt impossibly small to be the source of so much trouble. "All right," Silas said. "Let's get to work." For the first time in months, Ilara felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't about the tractor anymore. It was about everything. This is where the story changes. This is the moment a victim becomes a protagonist. Because Ilara Vance didn't just watch Silas work. She got her husband's toolbox. She put on his old coveralls, and she crawled under that tractor with him. The space was cramped. The ground was cold and damp. The smell of grease and diesel was thick in the air. Silas, with a lifetime of experience, pointed. "See that? Right there, behind the harmonic balancer. 2 bolts, 1 electrical connector." He showed her how to get a wrench on the bolts. Her knuckles scraped against the engine block. It hurt. She didn't care. She broke the bolts loose. She carefully removed the old sensor. It looked fine. Nothing was broken. Nothing was burned. It had simply failed inside. A 50-cent piece of electronics buried in $1's worth of plastic sold for $38 and quoted at $6,000. She handed the new sensor to Silas. He showed her how to apply a thin film of grease to the O-ring. She slid it into place. She threaded the bolts by hand. She tightened them with the wrench. "Not too tight," Silas cautioned. "Just snug." She attached the electrical connector. It clicked into place. A sound of finality. A sound of connection. "That's it," he said. They slid out from under the engine. They were both covered in dirt and grease. Ilara looked at her hands. They were black. The filth was under her fingernails. She had never felt cleaner in her life. "Now for the moment of truth," Silas said. She climbed back into the cab. The seat hissed. This time, the smell of her husband felt like encouragement, not a memory of loss, but a presence of strength. She took a deep breath. She turned the key. The dashboard lit up. The beeping was gone. The error code was gone. And then the engine roared to life. A deep, throaty, powerful sound. The sound of possibility. The sound of her future. Tears streamed down Alara's face, not tears of sadness, tears of rage and relief and a terrible, clarifying purpose. She let the engine run for a few minutes. The sound filled the farmyard. It was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. She shut it off. The silence that followed was different. It was peaceful. She got out of the cab. Silas was leaning against the huge front tire, wiping his hands on a rag. He was smiling, a real, genuine smile. "Thank you, Silas," she said. Her voice was thick with emotion. "I don't know how I can ever repay you." He shook his head. "Michael helped me rebuild my well pump 2 years ago. Wouldn't take a dime. Said that's what neighbors are for. Consider it paid." He looked at her, his expression turning serious. "You got a decision to make now, Alara." "What do you mean?" "You can call Frank Miller. Tell him you got it fixed. He'll be surprised, maybe a little embarrassed. And next time something breaks, you'll be right back where you started, at his mercy." "Or?" she asked. "Or," he said, "you make sure you're never at anyone's mercy again." He pointed at the Magnum. "That's a fine machine, but it's not your machine. It's the bank's machine. It's the dealer's machine. They hold the keys. They hold the software. They can turn it off anytime they want, and they can charge you $6,000 to turn it back on." He kicked the tire gently. "Freedom isn't owning a new tractor, Alara. Freedom is owning a tractor you can fix yourself." He let the words sink in. He got in his old truck. He started it up. The engine coughed and sputtered before settling into a rough idle. He leaned out the window. "Think about it," he said, and he drove away. Alara Vance thought about it. She thought about it all through planting season. Every time she started that Magnum, she felt a flicker of fear. What would break next? Who would she have to call? What impossible price would they quote? She got the crop in. The corn grew tall and strong. It was a good year. The harvest was bountiful. She made the payments to the bank. She paid her property taxes. She bought groceries. She survived. By the end of the year, she had a small surplus, a few $1,000s she could call her own. She could have put it in savings. She could have bought new clothes for Daniel. She could have fixed the peeling paint on the farmhouse. She did none of those things. That winter, she made a decision. She drove to the bank. She sold the Magnum 7240 back to the dealership. She took a loss, a significant one. Frank Miller handled the transaction. He was gracious. He told her she was making a wise choice, a sensible choice. He thought he had won. He thought he had successfully protected the poor widow from her own bad decisions. He had no idea what was really happening. Alara took the money from the sale. She took her surplus from the harvest. She went to an auction, a farm retirement auction 100 miles away. Silas went with her. She didn't buy one tractor. She bought two. Two John Deere 402s from the late 1960s. They were legends. Simple, powerful, reliable. And most importantly, fixable. There were no computers, no sensors, no proprietary software. Just diesel, steel, and hydraulics. She paid for them with cash. She bought an old John Deere 7700 combine. Cash. She bought a set of plows, a planter, and a cultivator. Cash. She drove home, followed by a convoy of old green machinery. Her neighbors thought she had lost her mind. They saw her collection of antiques. They shook their heads. "She's going backwards," they said. "She'll never keep up." Frank Miller heard the talk. He felt a pang of sadness for her. He saw it as the final, desperate act of a woman in over her head. He was wrong. What they saw as a step backward was Ilara's declaration of independence. That winter, she didn't rest. She and Silas turned her barn into a workshop. They tore down the engines of both 4020s. They rebuilt them piece by piece. She learned about pistons and sleeves. She learned about injector pumps and timing. She bought the service manuals. She read them at night until her eyes burned. Her hands, once soft from paperwork, became calloused and stained. She learned the language of machinery. One part at a time, one bolt at a time, one system at a time. Daniel, now 6, would sit on a stool in the corner watching. "Hand me that wrench, son," she'd say. "The half-inch." He learned the names of tools before he learned multiplication tables. He learned that problems could be solved, that you didn't have to call someone. You could open the book. You could pick up the tool. You could do it yourself. Let me tell you about the next 30 years, because this is where a story of survival becomes a story of triumph. It did not happen overnight. It happened slowly, methodically, one harvest at a time. 1995. Her input costs were 30% lower than her neighbors. No tractor payments, no combine payments, no $6,000 repair bills. Her fuel consumption was higher. Her speed was slower. But her profit per acre was higher. Contrast math. The neighbors had $1 million in equipment to farm 500 acres. Ilara had $50,000 in equipment to farm 500 acres. The numbers don't lie. 1998. A neighbor retired. He was land rich but cash poor. He needed to sell 80 acres. The big co-op offered him a lowball price. Ilara went to see him. She offered him 10% more. She wrote him a check. Cash. Her farm was now 560 acres. 2001. Her son Daniel was 13. He could rebuild a carburetor with his eyes closed. He spent his summers in the field and his winters in the workshop. He wasn't just her son, he was her apprentice. 2005. Drought hit the Midwest. Yields were down across the state. Farmers with huge debt loads were struggling. Some went under. Ilara's operation was lean. She had no debt. She had a bad year, but she was still profitable. She bought another 120 acres from a farm that went into foreclosure. Cash. Frank Miller at the dealership saw the land transfer records. He saw the name Vance. He frowned. He couldn't make it make sense. He drove past her farm. He saw the 2 old 402s working in tandem, pulling a chisel plow. He saw Ilara in the cab of one, Daniel in the other. It looked inefficient. It looked like a history exhibit. But the plat map said it was working. 2008. The financial crisis hit. Credit markets froze. Operating loans became impossible to get. The price of new equipment had skyrocketed. A new tractor like the one she sold was now $500,000. Farmers who had built their operations on credit were trapped. Ilara was insulated. She had no credit. She needed no credit. She paid for her seed, her fuel, her fertilizer with money from the last harvest. She was an island of stability in a sea of panic. That year, she bought another 240 acres, a prime piece of land right next to her original homestead. Cash. Her farm was now over 900 acres, one part at a time, 1 acre at a time, 1 year at a time. The community stopped laughing. The whispers of "crazy widow" turned into murmurs of respect. Young farmers started stopping by. They would see her old, reliable equipment running day in and day out. They would look at their own new, complex machines, sitting idle, waiting for a technician with a laptop, waiting for a part that cost more than their first car. "How do you do it?" they'd ask. Ilara would take them to her workshop. She'd show them her library of service manuals. She'd show them her well-organized tools. She'd tell them about Silas. She'd tell them about freedom, the freedom to fix your own machine. And sometimes, if they seemed to truly understand, she'd point to a small object on the wall. It was mounted on a piece of polished oak, under a small glass dome. It was the crankshaft position sensor, the $38 part. And she would tell them the story of the $6,000 quote. She never mentioned Frank Miller's name. She didn't have to. They knew. Let's fast forward again to 2022, 1 year before her son's keynote speech. Frank Miller was retiring. He was in his late 70s. He had built a successful business. He was respected. His son, Tom, was taking over the dealership. But the business was changing. The internet had laid bare the pricing discrepancies. Farmers were angry. The right to repair movement was gaining steam. Legislation was being proposed. The old model of locked software and proprietary parts was under threat. Profits were shrinking. Tom Miller was struggling. He saw the writing on the wall. He knew the business had to change or it would die. One afternoon he drove out of town. He didn't drive to the golf course. He didn't drive to the city. He drove to the Vance farm. He found Alara in her workshop. She was in her late 50s now. Her hair was graying. Her face was lined from the sun and the wind. She was grinding the valves on a cylinder head from an old combine. She didn't seem surprised to see him. She shut off the grinder. The silence buzzed. Tom Miller stood there in his clean polo shirt and pressed khakis. He looked like a tourist in a foreign land. "Mrs. Vance," he started. "Alara, I came to ask for your advice." She wiped her hands on a rag. She waited. He explained the situation at the dealership, the changing market, the customer anger, the unsustainability of the current model. "I want to build something that lasts," he said. "Something for my kids, like what you've built here. How did you do it? How did you build an operation so resilient, so independent?" Alara looked at him. She saw his father's face in his, but she saw a different kind of uncertainty in his eyes. Not the certainty of his father's pity. The uncertainty of a man who knows he needs to learn. She walked over to the wall. She pointed at the framed sensor. "It starts there," she said. Tom stepped closer. He peered at the small object. "What is it?" "It's a crankshaft position sensor," she said. Her voice was quiet, factual. "In 1993, your father quoted me $6,000 to replace it. He told me I should sell my land. He told me I wasn't capable of running this farm. He said he was trying to protect me." Tom Miller went pale. He had heard whispers of this story. But hearing it from her, in this workshop, surrounded by 30 years of evidence to the contrary, it was devastating. "I found the part for $38, Alara continued. "A neighbor helped me install it. And that day, I made a decision. I would never again let a man in an office decide what I was capable of. I would never again be a customer in a system designed to make me dependent. I would own my machines, or I would not own them at all." She looked around the workshop, at the tools, the manuals, the spare parts. "This isn't a museum, Mr. Miller. This is a declaration of independence. You want to know how to build a resilient business? Stop selling dependency. Start selling empowerment. Stop locking people out of their own property. Start teaching them how to be masters of it. The most dangerous limitation is the one imposed by someone who genuinely believes they are protecting you. Certainty about another person's capabilities, delivered with kindness, is more damaging than outright hostility, because you can't fight it with anger. It can only be disproven, and it takes decades of work. Tom Miller stood in silence for a long time. He looked at the sensor. He looked at Alara Vance. He finally understood. The $6,000 wasn't a price. It was a gate, and his father had tried to lock it. He thought he was keeping her safe inside. He was actually locking her out of her own life. "Thank you," he said. His voice was hoarse. He turned and walked out of the workshop. A year later, Miller Ag Solutions launched a new division, Heritage Iron. They began buying, restoring, and selling pre-computer-era farm equipment, the same John Deere 402s, the same 7700 combines. They offered classes on maintenance and repair. They sold parts, not proprietary parts, aftermarket parts. They hired mechanics who knew how to tune an engine by ear, not with a laptop. The program was a huge success. It didn't just save the dealership, it transformed it. And on the wall of Tom Miller's office, he hung a photograph, a picture of a $38 crankshaft position sensor. This is the legacy. It's not just in the 900 acres that Alara Vance and her son now farm, debt-free. It's not just in the profitability of their operation. The legacy is the ripple effect. In 2015, Alara established the Silas Croft Grant, a scholarship given every year to 2 students from the local high school. Not for a 4-year university, for a 2-year trade school program in diesel mechanics or welding. To date, 16 young people have become skilled technicians because of that grant. 16 people who can fix things. The legacy is in the workshop she holds on her farm. The right to repair rodeos, she calls them. Farmers from all over the state come to learn. They learn basic welding. They learn hydraulic diagnostics. They learn how to read a wiring diagram. They learn they are capable. The legacy is in her son, Daniel, the man on the stage in Omaha, who is not just a farmer, but a teacher, an advocate, a living testament to his mother's quiet 30-year revolution. The legacy is even in the Miller dealership, a business that learned the most valuable thing you can sell is not a product. It's knowledge. It's freedom. And what about Frank Miller, the man who started it all with his kind, certain, devastating advice? He lived to see it all. He saw Alara's farm expand on the county plat map. He heard the stories at the coffee shop. He watched his own son dismantle the business model he had built. He never spoke to Alara about it. He never apologized. Perhaps he couldn't. To apologize would be to admit that his kindness was a form of blindness, that his certainty was a form of arrogance. And for a man like Frank Miller, a good man, a respected man, that admission might have been too much to bear. But he knew. In the quiet of his retirement, he knew. He had told a woman she couldn't, and she had spent the rest of her life proving him wrong. That is its own form of justice, the quiet witness, the lonely reckoning. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is sitting in an office. They are being told what they are capable of. They are being given a price that isn't a price, but a gate. They are being protected. They are being managed. They are being limited with the best of intentions. This story is for them. The story of Alara Vance is proof that the most powerful response to "you can't" is not an argument. It's a quiet decision. It's a toolbox. It's the slow, methodical, relentless work of taking back control, one part at a time. If this story means something to you, subscribe to this channel. We tell the stories that matter. Drop a comment and tell us about a time someone underestimated you and what you did about it. And finally, share this video. Share it with anyone who has ever been told no. Share it with anyone who needs a reminder that the most important work is often the quietest. And it starts with the simple, revolutionary belief that you are capable of fixing your own machine.